Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It is Wednesday, July 30th around here. We're about 24 days from kicking off college football, so we got a lot to get to, no doubt about that. And we'll jump in and we'll start about a lot of different headlines have popped up over the last week or so that I want to get into with you guys right here. And we'll start over in Boulder, Colorado. A lot of different things going on there. Have plenty of other stuff for the rest of the show, including my top 10 quarterbacks, and we'll get to that in time. But let's get into a little bit of a headline catch-up here, and let's start in Boulder, and let's start with Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders had a press conference yesterday with his medical team. This was something that was leaked, I believe, on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, and a lot of people started to speculate. A lot of people started to think maybe he's not going to be able to coach this year, maybe some of the medical things that have kept him away from the sport for a couple of months this offseason, or we're going to keep him out of this season, and that will not be the case. It turns out that he did have bladder cancer throughout this year. He was diagnosed earlier this offseason. Sounds like he has gotten surgery to fully remove that bladder, replace it with a man-made bladder that works relatively the same way. Obviously is still going through a lot of discomfort, a lot of different things, and told the story in a very, lighthearted, with a little bit of brevity, the way that he normally does. So he is the normal Deion Sanders. He is the guy that we all have come to love. But at the end of the day, a very scary moment for someone in this sport that has been incredible to watch over the last couple of years. He is going to be okay, though. He is going to be coaching this upcoming year, and they got a game against Georgia Tech here pretty soon that's going to be absolutely massive. So going to be incredible, or going to be interesting at the very least to watch this kind of unfold, see how he goes through the season. He said there might just be a porta potty on the sideline. Don't think too much of it. Just something he has to do for the time being. He's had 14 surgeries since he's shown up in Boulder in 2021. That's a lot of different medical things going on for Deion Sanders, and really puts into perspective what he's been able to accomplish over there at Colorado with all of this stuff going on in the background. But more than anything else, just incredibly happy that he is healthy. A lot of really scary moments this offseason where you thought that might be the end of the Deion Sanders era at Colorado. Never wanted to see that happen, so very happy that he's going to be coaching this year. Obviously, this will be something to watch as we go throughout the year. This is obviously something that he feels confident about doing it right now. That can change pretty quickly. So that's definitely something that we're going to be watching week over week. That week one matchup against Georgia Tech will be very interesting for a number of reasons, both on the field and off the field with what's happening with Deion Sanders. But as of right now, he is cancer-free. He is on his way to a full recovery, and he will be on the sideline this fall. And I think that's a very nice conclusion to a scary about 48 hours. A lot of people with a lot of different ideas and conversations, some not founded reports that he was going to step away from the sport, but he is going to be coaching this fall, and I think we're all going to be better for it. Very, very happy that he is healthy, and very happy we're going to get to see Deion coaching this upcoming fall. The other big news from this past weekend was Trump signed an executive order that was dubbed Saving College Sports. It was the executive order that essentially the idea was to prohibit third-party pay-for-play payments. This is something that has been talked about in college football really since the introduction of NIL. There were a lot of worries about, boosters just deciding to give a guy $100,000 to play for their team, and that has happened from time to time. Now, it does say in the same executive order that if the compensation is fair market value, that will be allowed. Endorsements and things of that nature will be allowed. As you can imagine, that leaves a little bit of opening for some of these things to find new avenues at the very least in the NIL world. And something to keep in mind here, an executive order is not a law. So it's something that absolutely can put things into motion, can get people in the government looking towards college football a little bit more seriously, and particularly Congress, which is something that we've talked about on here a lot. People in college football have talked a lot about. You're probably going to need to get that antitrust exemption, and at the very least, this is a message that the President of the United States wants to see that happen a little bit more expeditiously. So, as of right now, nothing has really changed. NIL Go is still handling all of the, different NIL dealings of college athletes and using kind of the same criteria that was in this executive order to dub whether something is allowed or not. The House settlement is still in place as it was before. There is still a lot of mess in college football, but at the very least, it does prove that the government is looking at it very effectively, and they want something to happen. So while this piece of paper being signed does not really change the world of college football, at least in the short term, very well could push Congress to make a decision here pretty soon and hopefully help college football slowly kind of find its way out of the wilderness. And it's something to watch, no doubt about it. I think a lot of people were jumping for joy, saying teams like Texas and Oregon are in trouble going forward. I promise you, even if this does pass the way that it's written, that will not be the case. But at the end of the day, it is something that should inspire a little bit of confidence. I don't think this is the game changer, but I do think this could be the domino that slowly knocks over the one that is the game changer in college football and allows this sport to get a handle on all the things going on in it. So it's definitely something that a lot of people have dubbed, a nothing burger, and as of right now, it pretty much is. But it very well could develop into something that is not a nothing burger by any means. So it'll be really interesting to watch this kind of develop. Obviously, a lot of different things going on in the world of Congress right about now, so might still need to take some patience here, but at the very least does show the government in general is paying attention in no uncertain terms, and hopefully there's a little bit of a push to make things happen just a little bit quicker for us down here. Then we got to talk about this. DJ Lagway showed up to fall camp in a boot. This was something that it sounds like Florida knew about. Sounds like he is day-to-day and progressing relatively quickly. There's a problem here. There's no two ways about that. This kid has been at Florida for about 18 months at this point. He's had 4 different injuries. He had the shoulder injury that kept him out of a lot of practice last year. He had a sports hernia that was reported after the season, a hamstring later in the season, and now whatever this is, whether it's an ankle or a toe or his a foot injury, whatever that is, he is dealing with something right about now. It sounds like he is going to be ready for the opening weekend against LIU. It sounds like he is going to be fine going into the season. The problem here is that he needs to practice, and it was something that I heard Brooks Austin talking about over on the Film Guy Network. This is an uber-talented quarterback. We'll actually talk about him later in the show when we get into our top 10 quarterbacks, but the kid needs to start. He needs to play more football. He needs to practice this offense a little bit more effectively. It is a very, very hard offense to succeed in, especially if you're not on the practice field consistently. So that's something that he's going to have to make sure that he's on the field for. He's going to miss time throughout fall camp, and the question is, how quickly can he get things up to speed? And frankly, I think it can be relatively quickly, especially with 2 games to kind of get the juices flowing with LIU and USF before you jump into a game against LSU. So he has a little bit of time. He will have a little bit of a runway to get some pseudo practices in while they're actually playing a game type of thing. But at the end of the day, this is an uber-talented kid that can do any number of things over the next year or 2 years at Florida. He's got to be able to practice. He has missed way too much practice from last year into spring camp this year into now fall camp. He's going to have to get on the field, and if he can't, they're going to have a little bit of a problem out there in Florida. It's not to say that he's someone that you can't rely on. I think once he gets on the field consistently, this is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. If he can't practice, it's going to be much, much harder to get to that lofty level that he can absolutely get to. Is just another worry, another speed bump in the way for Florida. And frankly, if DJ Lagway is not on the field consistently this upcoming year, Florida and especially Billy Napier are in big-time trouble this upcoming offseason, and that guy might be finding his way out the door if Billy Napier finds his way. So that's going to be something to watch. There's no doubt about it. I like to think that it's a more precautionary and he will be fine by opening week, mainly because I really want to watch DJ Lagway play football this year. But at the end of the day, it continues to be a theme with him that just can't quite stay on the practice field, and he's a guy that very badly needs it right about now. So definitely will be something to watch. We'll give Harrison Bailey a little bit more time to get comfortable in the backup position, which could be all important this upcoming year. But at the end of the day, you want that guy on the field. If he's not, this is a very different football team. We also got some news last week about realignment, and frankly, I don't want to waste too much time on this. I've talked about it a little bit, but North Carolina sounds like they are looking toward the SEC in the future. They're looking along with a number of other teams in the ACC. I can promise you that. Whether you want to talk about UNC, Clemson, Florida State, Duke, Miami, Virginia, Georgia Tech, maybe even SMU, there are a lot of teams in the ACC that are going to go elsewhere. Let's just be totally honest. In 2030, a lot of those media deals come due, and a lot of the different exit fees that these teams will have to pay to get out of the ACC will drop pretty significantly, right around $75 million right then. That's when a lot of this stuff is going to happen. Now, we have a little bit of time here, so enjoy the next couple of years, enjoy the conferences as you have them, because I think we're going to get probably 20 plus team conferences in the SEC and the Big Ten when we come to 2030, and a lot of different teams, especially in the ACC, but maybe in the Big 12 as well, depending on what brands are being thrown around there. They're going to make the move. And UNC, I think, will probably lead the pack. I think Clemson and Florida State, as we've already talked about, had a little bit of a lawsuit with the ACC. They will not be far behind them. I can promise you that, even with the newly worked media deal that gives a little bit more to those level teams. I'm sure Duke will join UNC in that journey. Miami could be a very good fit for the Big Ten or the SEC. I think the Big Ten might be a little bit better of a fit, but this is all stuff that we can talk about down the road. Virginia and Georgia Tech, they fit just about anywhere. I'd love to see Georgia Tech back in the SEC. I think that'd be a really cool blast from the past, get that Auburn rivalry back up. But at the end of the day, this is something that is going to happen. I feel very confident in that. I think every team in the entire country understands that this is going to be the next iteration. In 2030, there is going to be a lot of movement among the power conferences and probably among the smaller conferences because of that. So enjoy the next little bit is what I'm going to say. It's chaotic outside. At the very least, conference realignment hasn't been as chaotic the last couple of years. It's going to get chaotic in a couple of years here, and I think UNC will probably be the first one to jump the shark there, and then we'll just see a ton of ACC teams and maybe a couple of Big 12 teams join that group as well, and the Big 10 and the SEC are going to become AFC, NFC type figures in college football. Now we got to talk about Tennessee. Boo Carter, the situation going on in Knoxville is really interesting. There were reports earlier this offseason that Boo Carter got into a little bit of an altercation, actually multiple different altercations with some teammates on the Tennessee team. It sounds like some team leaders confronted him about missing some team activities, and that developed into some different things that had went on. It doesn't sound like this is remotely a Nico situation. It doesn't sound like he's trying to get more money in NIL. It doesn't sound like there's any, negotiations going on here. Just sounds like there was a little bit of missing from Boo Carter. There was a lot of missing some meetings, and some team leaders took exception to that, and that's kind of developed over the last little bit. Sounds like it's happened a couple of different times here. He is going to stay with Tennessee. That is the big news here over all of this. He will be in Tennessee this upcoming year. He will be playing for the Vols. The question is, how bought in is he? How locked in is he on this season? He's an uber talented kid that could be the very best player on the defense for that team this upcoming year, especially with Jamal McCoy dealing with an injury going into fall camp. They need this kid really bad, and they need him to be fully locked in on the process. It'll be an interesting thing to watch. There's no doubt about that. Tennessee's had a number of these instances this last offseason, and it's going to be a little bit of a worry going into the year. But you will have that guy on the roster. How quickly will he get on the field? How much will he be on the field will depend on him over the next couple of weeks. I think he's an uber talented kid, and I think he will be a factor in this Tennessee season, but it's a very, very interesting time, and definitely not the time that Josh Heupel wants to be dealing with a lot of this roster stuff. He wants to get to work about football. Been a little bit distracted over there in Knoxville, but it sounds like he is with the team. It sounds like they're getting underway with fall practice this week at some point. Hopefully everything works out there and we get to see Boo Carter do some really incredible things, because he is more than capable of that. And then some wrap-up things here. Michigan and Western Michigan sound like they might be looking towards Germany to play an opening game. I'll just make it very plain and simple. Don't do this. If you're going to play, international games, I had an idea was brought up on Unnecessary Roughness, the Barstool College Football podcast, where do that in bowl season. I think that would be a much more fun way to kind of expand the sport to different countries and play around with, globalizing the college football brand instead of doing it in week 0. I don't understand that approach, and also don't make it Michigan, Western Michigan. If you're going to globalize the sport, let's make it a little bit better matchups. And I think bowl games would obviously do that. They would give you two teams that are really solid teams instead of Michigan going over to Germany just to win by 45 points. So not a fan of that at all. I don't expect that to really unfold the way at least it's said right now, but definitely something to watch. And not something I love. I'll just be totally honest. Then you'd add Taj Rael, the cheating scandal that happened at Memphis this past season. There were pictures that came out last week of a DM that he had with Owen McCown, the quarterback over at UTSA, that he was sharing the playbook with. He was sharing different signals. He was telling him which guys to attack on the back end, and the guy he told to attack was the guy that was starting over Taj Rael. So there seemed to be a little bit of bad blood in that locker room towards the end of the season. He has now found his way to Purdue. Doesn't sound like Purdue has too much of a problem with this. It sounds like they feel like it's being mischaracterized in the media. We'll see what happens here. Obviously going to be something that Purdue fans are going to be watching very closely, at the very least, to this kid. But at the end of the day, a very bizarre situation. Sounds like Purdue's okay. Sounds like they're going to move forward. Just a very, very weird thing, and definitely something that I wouldn't feel nearly as confident if I was Barry Odom in this kid right now. But beside that, then you also have Central Michigan. Got the notice of allegations in the Connor Stallions case when he was on their sideline. The details have not fully come out yet, so we'll see what that looks like. I don't think it's going to be too aggressive against Central Michigan, but one thing to keep in mind here is it does feel like it could be coming down for Michigan here pretty soon. You know, you get one out of the way. I think Michigan's NOA is going to be coming in the mail here pretty soon, and we'll see what it looks like. It definitely could be very aggressive. It could make a lot of Ohio State fans really mad, but at the end of the day, it's going to be awesome to watch that develop. Going to be very interesting to see how Michigan's year changes over the next 2 weeks. I don't think it'll be too aggressive, but definitely could have some big-time impacts on the Wolverines. But that's all stuff that we will talk about in time. Obviously, the biggest news is Deion Sanders is healthy, and that's awesome news over there in Boulder. Awesome news for college football. An incredible ambassador of the sport, and someone that I think we all want to see on the sidelines on Saturday. So very happy about that. But let's take our break here. When we come back, let's talk about who's buying and who I'm selling. We'll do a little bit of a stock market segment in a second here. I'll give you 4 teams that I'm buying, one from every power conference. 4 teams I'm selling, same exact way from one from every conference, and one that's very bold on here. But we'll get into that after this, so stick with us.